We all wish we could talk to animals. As it turns out, we can. Animal Connections with Laura Rowley explores the nature of interspecies communication. What are our animals trying to tell us? Animals commune through love, a force that opens all doors. Listening to them teaches us how to be better humans. Why? We can trust them to tell us the deepest truth about who we are and how one can grow into a more powerful version of self. Laura shares over 20 years of stories and wisdom learned from her work as an animal communicator in this hard and thought-provoking show.
Welcome. I'm Laura Rowley. You can listen to Animal Connections with Laura Rowley on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Friday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Listen online or on your mobile device. To learn more and for a full schedule, go to dreamvision7radio.com. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network is the media partner for Omega Institute. Thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to have an interesting segment on fun, how animals contribute to fun, make fun, and bring us into a state of fun. That is an idea that can't really be underestimated because in our adult lives, or even in our adult lives, life is pretty serious. We always have deadlines to meet, schedules to maintain, partners and teachers and bosses to make happy. And to have a little fun in your life, it can be pretty elusive at times. Life gets pretty serious, and there's serious ramifications for not showing up on time and maintaining our end of the bargain, whatever that is, in the various contracts we've made with people and family members about what we say we're going to do. So, where do you get a reprieve from that? Where do you take a deep breath and relax? Well, certainly there's a lot of ways to give yourself a rest through exercise or meditation or a number of friendships, anything. But the one thing that can really help is if you have a pet, because the pet usually is looking for fun, relaxation himself. So they invite us into a world that I think lots of times we forget about. I mean, how often do you walk into the door, you've been gone all day, you've got to start dinner, you got to get going, there's a lot that has to happen, and your dog is so eager to see you, wagging their tail. We talk about that a lot on this show, how happy they always are to see us. And we just want to whirl past them. And hi Fido. I got to run and put all my stuff down, and then I got to run out and get the groceries. And do you have to go to the bathroom quick? Then come with me. And we sometimes sort of treat them almost like, another job, another thing we have to do. Meanwhile, they're just looking at us with total joy on their face, their tails wagging, or if it's a cat, he's purring and rubbing against our legs, and we're thinking, well, I don't want to trip over you while I go get the groceries. So sometimes when we're not careful. So I think a lot of people that I speak to as an animal communicator are pretty good at doing that. They often realize that the animal is inviting them into a new state of being, the state of being that today I'm referring to as fun. In other words, play as a way of being alive versus just something that kids do or something that you grow out of. Play is super important for us to keep our focus on because it allows us to be in the flow of life. When we're playing, we're blissfully unaware often of how we look while we're doing. We just find we're smiling and it's completely relaxing. We often forget while we're playing about the woes that we have, the bills we have to pay, the problems we have to solve. We just suddenly realize, all this time has gone past and I was just totally in the moment and totally having fun. And animals live on that level. When your little dog goes outside and he's, running around sniffing and smelling the bushes and, enjoying the sense of what he's smelling the air, they're totally in a place of just being where they are and loving where they are. And it is us that often bring them back into a disrupted state when we call them or say, oh, don't go over there, that's the neighbors, or come back here, stay with me. In other words, we get nervous and tense and say, no, you have to be with us. Now we're going to go for a walk and stay here, be quiet, don't bark at any other dogs. But left to their own devices, they would probably just run around like crazy and bark at stuff. And would that be disruptive? Well, yes, and perhaps it's not really a great idea because harm could come to them if they did that, or to the people that they barked at, or the animals. But the point is, a bigger point, the point is they remind us that there's nothing really better than play. There's not much that replaces that sense of just childlike innocence and the incredible appeal, actually, of not being responsible, but just being and laughing and feeling that uplifting joy that we feel when we're with a dog, a cat. I mean, ask anyone, is there anything much better than either playing with a puppy or a kitten? You know, sitting on the ground and just watching their antics. They remind us, when they do their little rolls and twists and scratches and bites, of what it's like to just be sensual and to just be in a state of bliss. And so it's such an amazing thing to have in your home, this little bliss factor that is always reminding you, oh, come play with me, come have fun with me. And of course, as an animal communicator, people phone me. My business is that people phone me privately, they make an appointment, and they want to discuss oftentimes where things have gone a little bit wrong with the relationship. Like, it's not so much fun. Like, maybe the animal is starting to behave in ways that are stressing out the human, or the human is behaving in ways that are stressing out the animal. And they're calling me to say, so what do we do now? Because this isn't going so well. And they want to hear the animal's perspective of why it's not going so well. And then I help them resolve the situation by coming up with a solution that is mutually attractive to both parties. I'm kind of like the ambassador that just sort of puts the two of them together with a platform of, like, if you did it this way and she did it that way, you two would be happy with each other. So that often sort of entails me figuring out what's wrong. Why isn't it working? And why are we falling out of this nice, blissful joy place and fun and into this other place? So when I'm working with people, for instance, I had someone call me recently with a show dog. It was a Great Dane. And they were taking the dog to shows, and they just loved taking the dog to shows and spending time with like-minded people who also showed dogs. It made them feel so happy to be out and about and proud of this magnificent dog. And the dog started to growl when they went into the show ring at anyone that came near them, including the judge. And in dog shows, the judge has to be able to touch the dog. And the dog was grumbling in the back of his throat to say, don't touch me. So that was wrecking the whole shows, because then you're just sort of dismissed from the ring. And it's actually kind of shameful to bring a dog to the ring that does that, because it shows that you're ill-prepared and that your dog is unhappy and that you really shouldn't have even come into the ring to start with. So it was really taking this woman from a place of happiness to a place of, really bummed, like kind of ashamed of herself. And so she wanted to know why the dog was doing that to her, because at one time he was great at going to the show ring. So we had a little chat, the dog and I, and then of course I related to her. And he said that he just didn't think it was passed on. He didn't like the other dogs near him, and he didn't like the judge touching him, and it felt like pass, or close to your space, like kind of 4 inches away from your. And why he would have that, he didn't think the owner would to her either. So I explained it to the woman, and the woman, of course, really loved the dog, and that's why she liked showing him. So she was kind of at first miffed and said, well, tell him it's not, it's only for a second, and he has to be touched on the back. That's how it goes. And he said, well, I don't think so. I don't think I have to do that. And I don't think if you love me, you would make me do that. In other words, that's not fun for me. So he really wouldn't back off that idea, even though I tried to explain it to him a little different way. Sometimes I can find a different way to explain it that makes it fun again, but he wasn't having it. So I discussed it with the woman, and I said, do you think you could do something other than show this dog, like, find a sport or an activity that maybe would be more fun for him? This is your idea of fun, but it's not his idea of fun. And, she loved him enough that she thought about it, and she did, in fact, think of a better activity. She started to teach the dog scenting, where they have to go and find and put their nose down and track things. And so she started to do that more as a sport. So there was only a performance-based issue. It wasn't just how they looked, and the judge didn't have to touch them. And the dog was happy as a clam that he got to do that. He thought it was wonderful. And they worked it out to where everybody found the mutual place of fun. And then the woman even said to me, this was years later, that she kind of became a convert and stopped showing and started to only do the scenting kind of show, working dog kind of things. And she said it's so much more fun. I track around out in nature. I'm out in, wandering around in the fields with the dog, because you stay with your dog while they're doing this. And I'm not going to some indoor place and worrying about how people are looking at me or judging me. And she said, it turns out I really wasn't having that much fun either. I was a wreck, and who likes to feel judged? Some people enjoy it. It wasn't her idea of fun, was her point. But she didn't really realize it wasn't her idea of fun. But the dog had realized it. The dog realized that her mood got a little crabby. She got defensive. She didn't really like having people look at her with an eye to seeing what she could have done better or different with her own dog. It's her dog. It's her fun. It's her life. He saw that, and so he was letting her know, like, this is stupid what we're doing. And it's funny because they both ended up, they've had a happy ever after kind of tale to it, because they both ended up having so much fun, realizing that it's more fun to just make yourself happy rather than worry about or make other people approve of you, which is what the showing was, which works for some people if that's their sense of fun, but not for her. So this kind of brings up the idea that fun lots of times has to do with doing the things that we love. They've seemed timeless and endless when we're doing something that we love. All of a sudden we look up and think, was it a half an hour or hours? I was having so much fun. And when we're doing something that we hate, there's a different sense, that the clock drags onward. Or we think, oh, this is so stupid, get me out of here. So when that happens, why does it happen? Because love is at one end of the spectrum, or so it seems, and hate is at the other end. But actually, I think that's probably not quite true. Actually, it's more like love is at one end of the spectrum, and fear is at the other end. So in other words, sometimes we hate doing things that bring up our fears. So we have love at one end and not hate, but rather love at one end and fear at the opposite end of the spectrum. It's like so the more love that we get to participate, the more it is, the more fear in there, the more our ego becomes entrenched in the whole process. And then we start to become afraid of losing control, looking silly, not being competent in what we're doing. Our ego starts to take over, and often when our ego starts to take over, we can notice that we're sort of falling out of vibratory alignment with the life force. All of a sudden it becomes more important that we're right, or that we be seen fairly, or that we be seen as triumphant versus having fun. So this can happen with any sort of sport or any activity in the realm of the human existence. But animals can really highlight this for us, because we notice that they start to make us angry. Like this woman was angry that Great Dane is growling at people and humiliated. So when you're starting to feel low vibrational feelings about what your animal is doing, it usually means that your ego is starting to get involved, and you're starting to think you deserve something better, and maybe they should be doing something different. And maybe they should be. But the point is, on a scale between fear and love, you can kind of check in with yourself and say to yourself, well, where am I in the scale? Am I just afraid of being wrong or looking silly? Should I just go and do something entirely differently with this animal? So there's a lot of course, different levels of that, because sometimes it's appropriate actually just to train an animal differently or start over with a fresh sense of things. But kind of a bigger one here in terms of the scale of things, when you have fear versus love, your vibration is changing. So when you become